All right, kiddos, now it is time to get into the different ways that we can find slope or the different things that we can pull slope from, okay? Slope just describes the rate of change, and it can also be called the unit rate or the constant rate of change. So you have to get used to seeing it called those different things, okay? They're not always going to say slope. They may refer to it as the rate of change, unit rate, or the constant rate of change, okay? There are three things that we normally use to find the slope. We use rise over run, or the change in y over the change in x. We can also use the slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, okay? And as you can see, there are 5 different ways that we are going to talk about finding the slope from, okay? From a graph, equation, table, word problem, and from 2 points. All right, so let's get started. To find slope from a graph, we are simply going to choose 2 points on the graph, count the rise from one point to the next, then the run, and we're going to write that slope as a fraction. Okay, since we are counting the rise over run, we will plug those numbers into the fraction rise over run. Now remember, rise is just how much you go up or down. Run is just how much you go from left to right. You can also hear this called fall or crawl. If rise over run makes you feel uncomfortable, you can use fall and crawl. Okay, it's the same thing. How much you go up or down is the rise. Left to right is the run. Okay, let's look at example A. What I've done with example A, I have filled in the lines that were fuzzy to see, and I have plotted the points that were there, where the line that we are looking at intersects each of these lines perfectly is where we plotted a point, okay? So we want to see how we get from one point to the next. I can go from this point to the next. I go up to the right 1. And that works from point to point. Up to the right 1, up 2 more, to the right 1, okay? Up is a positive word, so plus 2. Right is also a positive word, plus 1, okay? Now we are going to stick it into a fraction. Rise over run equals the rise, how much we went up or down? 2. Run, how much did we go from left to right? Once. And 2 over 1 is equal to 2, okay? That is our slope. Since I don't have much room, I'm not going to write the word slope. I'm going to write the letter that represents slope, which is M. My M is equal to the rise over run, which is equal to up 2 over 1, which is just plain old 2, okay? Now, if I wanted to find my y-intercept from this graph, it's simply where the line crosses the y-axis. Where the line crosses the y-axis, okay? It crosses here at 0, 1. We just want that y value, which is 1. So our y-intercept is equal to 1, okay? I'm doing this so that you can learn how to put it into slope-intercept form. We found our slope. We found our y-intercept. Now I want to plug it in to y equals mx plus b, which is slope-intercept form, okay? If I'm looking at this graph, all I have to do is fill in the m and the b into this formula, okay? So y equals 2x plus 1 would be the equation for that graph up there. Got it? Let's look at the next one. What I've done again, I shaded in the lines that were a little fuzzy, and I went ahead and plotted the points. I want to do the same thing with this line. I want to gather all the information that I need to plug this or to find the equation for this graph, starting with finding the slope from the graph. Okay, remember slope is rise over run. So we need to figure out what that is. From one point to the next, I see I go up 1, to the left 3 spaces, up 1, to the left 3 spaces, okay? Up is a positive word, +1. Left is a negative word, -3, okay? So my rise is 1. My run, -3. We're going to write it as -1/3. Okay, pull the negative out front. You have -1/3 as a slope. For your y-intercept, where this line crosses the y-axis, it crosses the y-axis here at 0, 0. We just need that y value. So your b, or y-intercept, equals 0. Now we're going to take those numbers and plug them into this equation. Y equals -1/3 x plus 0. Or you can just leave it as -1/3 x, since that 0 doesn't add any value to the equation, okay? So that will be your equation for that line there. Let's look at from an equation. Since we're speaking on equations, how do we find slope from an equation? Excuse me. The equation must be in slope-intercept form first. That's y equals mx plus b. And slope is the coefficient of x, or the number in front of x, okay? The coefficient of x in this case is m. So whatever takes the place of that m right there is your slope. Let's go through these and find the slope and the y-intercept for each one. Remember, y equals mx plus b, where that m is the slope and that b, whatever takes place of that b, is the y-intercept, okay? A, y equals 4/3 x minus 12. That 4/3 took place of that m right there, so that is my slope. And -12 took place of that b right there, so that's gotta be my y-intercept. Okay? That took place of m. This took place of b. For letter B, y equals -3x minus 2. That -3 took the place of my m, so that's gotta be my slope. That -2 here took place of my b, so that has to be my y-intercept. Okay, that has to be where the line crosses the y-axis. Example C, y equals -15x plus 7. This 15 took the place of the m. 7 took the place of b. So that 15 has to be my slope. And that 7 has to be my y-intercept, or my b. Okay? And D, y equals -0 1/10 x. Well, this took the place of my slope, or my m, so that has to be my slope. I don't have anything over here to take the place of my b. So imagine a +0 here. If you have nothing to take the place of b, then 0, or the origin, is your y-intercept. If nothing takes the place of b, 0 or the origin is your y-intercept. This line passes through the origin, which is 0, 0. okay? Let's look at the next way we can find slope, which is from a table. How to find slope from a table. Find the constant rate of change of the x values and the y values, and then we write that change as a fraction. Since I'm dealing with the table and it told me I need to find the constant rate of change of the x and y values, and I need to write that change as a fraction, I'm going to use the change in y over the change in x to solve these problems. Whenever I find the change in y over the change in x, that is going to be my m, or my slope, for each of these examples and for whenever you're finding the slope from a table. Okay? So let's look and see. I want to find the change in y over change in x. This is just a reminder for ourselves. Here is the example for A, or example A. Okay? To find the change in y over the change in x, you need to see how these points change from number to number. So for the x values, from -1 to 0 is +1. From 0 to 1 is +1. And from 1 to 2 is also +1. Okay? For the y values, 0 to 2, +2. 2 to 4, +2. And 4 to 6 is +2. So the change in y over the change in x is 2 over 1, because we took the changes in y and we saw how y changed and put it up top. We saw how x changed and put it down bottom. And remember, 2 divided by 1 is simply 2. Okay? That 2 represents my slope. Now, to find your y-intercept in a table, to find the y-intercept from a table, start at the x value and find the 0. Wherever x is 0, y has a value as well. Wherever x is 0, y has a value as well. My value of y when x is 0 in this case is 2, so my y-intercept is 2. Okay? Now you have all you need to plug in to the slope-intercept formula, or slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. Okay? Y equals 2, because that's my slope, x plus 2, that 2 is my y-intercept. This is the equation for that table. Okay? That is the equation for that table. Let's look at example B. We need to find the change in y over the change in x. Change in y over the change in x. 3 to 6 is +3. 6 to 12 is +6. 12 to 15 is +3. For the change in y, 20 to 16 is -4. 16 to 8 is -8. 8 to 4 is another -4. Okay? Now, since I have 2 separate changes in y's and 2 separate changes in x's, I'm going to write both of them. For my change in y, I have a -4. I also have a -8. When y is -4, x is 3. When y is -8, x is 6. I can see if they compare to each other by looking here and saying that they are equal to each other, because if I do -4 times 2, I get -8. If I do 3 times 2, I get 6. Okay? So they are proportional, they are the same. But remember, you want your slope in simplest form, and here is the simplest form. Okay? That is your simplest form. So your change in y over change in x would be -4 over 3, or -4/3. To find your y-intercept, remember, you have to find where 0 represents x, y is a value. But there's no 0 in this table, so we need to work backwards. Instead of doing plus 3 down the table, we need to do a minus 3 to get to 0. Because 3 minus 3 is 0. Okay? Instead of doing minus 4 here, I'm going to do plus 4 to see what my y-intercept would be. I only went back one step here, so I'm going to go back one step there. 20 plus 4 is 24. So my y-intercept is 24. Okay? Now I can plug it into slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. Y equals negative 4/3. I'm sorry. Got too close to that hole in my paper. Y equals negative 4/3 x plus 24. This is the equation for that table. Okay? Stay tuned to the next video where we will discuss the last two sections of this paper, slope from a word problem and slope from 2 points.